A man from Terre Haute, Indiana, flips off a state trooper and gets a ticket. But the story doesn't end there. Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Men, a gentleman named Mark May, and I use the word gentleman advisedly, felt that a police officer had been tailgating him. And so when the cop pulled over another driver up ahead of him, as Mark May drove by the police officer, he issued the single-digit salute to that state trooper. The state trooper gave chase, pulled him over, and wrote a ticket alleging that he had given him the finger was an act of provocation, and that kind of act is something that could result in basically, they were accusing him of trying to inspire somebody else to beat him up. is the thrust of the crime. Anyway, Mark May, with a little help from the American Civil Liberties Union, has decided to sue on the grounds that his freedom of expression and his Fourth Amendment rights were violated by the police officer writing him the ticket. And he's seeking unspecified damages. Apparently his business was harmed for several days while he was dealing with this. This is an interesting thing, and let me go to Bill Whittle first on this, because, Bill, nobody has been more of a law and order man over the years than you have, and your support for the people who are law enforcement officers and who back up that whole law and order society has been unquestioned. What do you think of this creep who's given the finger to a representative of the law and order community?
Sounds like a regular old American to me.
Dang right.
I am as we said on the backstage show, I am a law and order American, and I have nothing but the highest respect for law enforcement. But if you had to put me in a box, I would have to say I'm a Smokey and the Bandit kind of conservative. And what I mean by that is I respect law enforcement when law enforcement is dealing with issues of crime and so on. And when it becomes an exercise in authority, then I'm kind of on Bandit's side. If the sequence of this had been even slightly different, I'd have a completely different opinion of it. If the police officer had lit up and tried to pull over the guy for a traffic violation, and then the guy had flipped him off, I'd be 100% behind this police officer. That would be reacting to a lawful command to pull over and so on. But look, this is overreacting, needless to say, and this is an abuse of your authority. If you don't want to get, the finger flipped at you, this is probably not the right line of work. And if you quit being a police officer, I wouldn't go into parking enforcement either, as a general rule, or political punditry for that matter, conservative punditry anyway. But so what I'm saying here is, I think this is actually a chance, without anybody getting shot, to realize that unless this guy has the police officer has some real good reason for why he was having a very bad day, I think to politely ask him to find another line of work. Because if you're gonna light up and arrest somebody, pull them over, and claim that your safety was threatened because this guy flipped you off, then I think you're the kind of policeman that probably is going to do more harm than good.
Stephen Green, I know you're a little L libertarian, self-described. There has been a lot of talk lately in the news about how the party of law and order, the Republicans, have begun attacking the Department of Justice and the FBI, largely because they perceive an attack on their guy, the guy in the White House. And this seemed just to me like a little snapshot of a larger issue. Are we situational law and order people? Are we basically saying, hey, the ACLU is right in this case, we want to defend this guy who flips off a cop. However, it's okay for us to attack law and order. I guess I actually stated that backwards. It's what has happened to the party of law and order, where we can go after law enforcement like this, like Bill just did.
Well, first of all, I think you've misstated the case a lot of us have with the...
I've misstated everything.
The beef we have with the FBI here. It's not that they're attacking Trump, it's that they're doing so in an unlawful way, or what it certainly appears to be an unlawful way, suppressing the source of the dossier before going to the FISA court and all the rest. That is not behaving in a lawful manner as far as I'm concerned. So let's frame that correctly. The broader picture, though, is if you believe in liberty, that's not law and order. I hate that phrase, law and order. That sounds regimented. If you believe in liberty, you believe in law and disorder. Liberty is it's untidy, it's disorderly, it's innovative, it's exciting, but as many things as liberty is, it
rebellious.
Is not orderly and rebellious too. Americans have always had a problem with authority, and that's why we went from 2 or 3 million farmers and merchants hugging the Atlantic coast to 330 million of us almost on a continental-wide global empire.
Steve, if we want people, the right got all up in arms about situations like the Michael Brown shooting and stuff like that, where we basically said if Michael Brown had done what the police officer instructed him to do, everything would be okay, he'd be alive today. And at the same time, we say, we want everybody to respect the police officer. But in this case, you're saying, oh, it's okay, you can flip off the cops. Doesn't that just foster
Absolutely. Let's talk about this cop.
Disrespect for law?
Let's talk about this cop. Let's talk about who really showed bad judgment here. The cop already had somebody pulled over, if I understood correctly, got offended at a schoolyard finger gesture, stops writing the ticket, takes off in his car, maybe into traffic, to pursue a guy, and any pursuit, no matter how short, has got a little element of danger just because he got his little feelings hurt. You know what? Maybe the guy who flipped him off wasn't the, what did you say? You stretched the word gentleman in your intro? Okay, maybe this guy's a little bit of a jerk. But what the cop did was even more thoughtless, more reckless, and more dangerous than what somebody else did with a simple finger gesture.
And there's no evidence that the guy in question did anything other than obey the officer's commands. I mean, we don't have any evidence that once he was pulled over, he decided to fight with the policeman, physically fight with him. I'm sure he had some words to say, but the policeman pulled him over. He pulled over. He didn't make a run for it. So, yeah, he did everything the law enforcement officer told him to do. Yeah. Once the law enforcement officer was under, what do you call it, the color of... under the color of authority. There's a term for that, basically. But this all happened.
Bill, in the comments to one of our episodes last week, somebody reminded me of reminded all three of us of a great thing from the movie Demolition Man, where you automatically got issued a citation for swearing, and so Sylvester Stallone just starts swearing up a storm to get all these citations issued because he's out of toilet paper. That's America.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, part of the labor of advocating for liberty, as we have for these many years on Right Angle and its predecessor show, is that I often find myself defending people who are engaged in behavior I find reprehensible. And sticking up for somebody who does something that I would never do. And that's the case here. I mean, what this guy did to the police officer, I think, was inappropriate. I don't think you should treat anybody with disrespect that way, but certainly I don't think you should do that to an officer of the law. Now, that said, I think sometimes being able to overlook an offense is the better part of valor. And a police officer, if he wants to hold the respect of his community, needs to be able to see his position before he considers his person. And he needs to be able to be above a knee-jerk reaction to a slight or an offense. I think both of them acted immaturely in this situation, but I will defend the right of the finger man, so to speak, to be immature, and I will oppose the right of the police officer to pull him over. I'm with the ACLU on this one, as it sounds like Bill and Steve are as well. Thanks to the members.
Did it happen in Florida?
What's that?
Did it happen in Florida?
No, it wasn't Florida Man.
It wasn't Florida Man? Okay.
It was not Florida Man. It was Terre Haute Man, actually.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned, sorry.
They've recently unearthed Terre Haute Man, and carbon dating has established that he's some 250 million years old. This is Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.